On April 26, 1890, a train coming from Cincinnati, Ohio, would lose control of its brakes as it reached Staunton, Virginia. As the train bounded around the curve at around 70 miles an hour, cars were thrown on and off the tracks. Eventually, the sleeper car, which was at the very back of the train, would derail, crushing everyone inside. Miraculously, only 10 people were injured. One person would lose their life. And the effects of the 1890 Staunton train wreck would forever change Staunton. Join me in the special report as we look into the history of the railroad in Staunton, the wreck itself, and the aftermath. The railway had been an important part of Staunton's history up until that point. Donna Huffer with the Augusta County Historical Society is well read on the impact the railroad had.
Railroad traffic up until 1890 was very, very important to the city. It was the lifeblood of the city. People traveled on the train, but more importantly, it was how they made a living. The warehouses depended on the train. We were the wheat basket of the South, and the produce, the wheat, the crops, the livestock, all went by train all over the eastern coast. We were also a center for whiskey, and our whiskey was very famous, the Baumgartner whiskey, and it went out by train. Without the trains, you wouldn't have had this kind of quick growth that you had from early on, I would say from 1850 to right up to 1900. On April 26, the Chesapeake and Ohio train out from Cincinnati was traveling to Baltimore, and with many stops along the way, and they had a passenger car, a couple of passenger cars, they had 2 sleeper cars, they had 1 smoker car, and on the train were various business people. The train had the entire troupe from Pearl Perkins Opera Company, and this was a showbiz company. It was singing and storytelling and acting, as well as just opera as well. And they were coming down on the train from Cincinnati to go to a show in Baltimore on Monday night.
As the Pearl Pekin Company left their latest show in Cincinnati, one of the members of the company was looking forward to her future. 18-year-old Myrtle Knox reportedly had a beautiful voice and stunning looks, and she dreamed of being a stage star, mainly an actress, all over the country, and this was her very first start in the industry.
Myrtle Knox was an 18-year-old young woman from Blue Springs, Jackson County, Missouri. She was one of 6 daughters, and she had decided she wanted to be in show business. Her parents just disapproved greatly, and she pretty much left home and went to join the company, and one of her parents went back up there to try to talk her out of it, but she wouldn't go. She wouldn't go home. And she stayed and she joined the chorus. She had a beautiful voice. She hoped to go up the ladder to become a successful actress and singer. This was her first debut with the Pearl Perkins Company, and they were based in Kansas City.
In the early morning hours, the train bound for Staunton was running behind when tragedy struck.
And so here it was, they were expected into Staunton at 1:35 a.m. So it was already 2:30 a.m. before the train approached Staunton. And at the top of the hill, the brake rod fell out of the train and broke. And this was a long grade, an 80-foot, 4-mile downgrade to the station. And so the train lost its air brakes at that point. The engineer was panicked, and he knew he was going to crash at the station. And there were people on the platform. There were people in the waiting room. They were waiting for the train so they could go on to Baltimore. The train went on, and they say it reached the speed of 70 miles an hour as it came down the hill and hit the curve. The cars did come off one rail and lean towards the station as he went around the sharp curve, but then they went back. The only one that derailed was the last car, which was a sleeper car, which had 12 of the opera troupe in it, in bunks, and at this time, supposedly sleeping or, resting in the sleeper car. And unfortunately, as it derailed, and the other cars had leaned, they took out the baggage shed that was connected to the main depot, and the one on the east was caught on the smoker car, and it exploded. Wood went everywhere, broke out all the glass in the smoker car, and then crushed the last car that came around, the sleeper car, which came around on its side, derailed and crushed it. And this was horrifying to the people, the few people that were at the station, and they had already sounded the alarm there. There were 10 people that were injured, and in the sleeper car they pulled them out with various injuries. They had sprained ankles, they had head injuries, blood coming down the face. These were eyewitnesses. They had splinters. One woman couldn't walk and was taken out by a stretcher. She later learned she could walk, but she had internal injuries. Evidently she had bruised her spine, and but she did survive. Other people had broken arms and this kind of thing. One person was killed, and she was Myrtle Knox. Unfortunately, she was on the top bunk, and she was impaled by some of the wood splinters from the baggage shed. And she was with a broken arm as well, but worst was her leg was tore off or hanging by a thread, depending on what account you read. And one of the other splinters had severed her artery in her upper thigh, and she bled to death. And the other people in the troupe were much older and much more experienced, and were just crushed to learn that the youngest member of their troupe had died this way, and on her first debut. And it really captured the spirit of the city. When they pulled her out of the wreckage, they took her straight to Wilkes Funeral Home, and the undertaker did what he could, and she was placed in a metallic casket. And the next day when the sun came up, hundreds of people had come to see her and wish her well. And they had, at that time, the King's Daughter organization, a charity organization, had bought flowers for her. The railroad company had sent flowers, and various businesses had donated flowers and helped pay to send her body back on Tuesday to her parents, and where she's buried in Blue Springs.
So in this area right here is where the train derailed, and where the Austerlitz car with young Myrtle Knox in it would have derailed. Now, looking at original maps, this wharf would have been extended down a little bit, but it would have come up from that direction there, would have derailed at the end here, and between me and that sign up ahead that says Staunton, Virginia, is where Myrtle Knox would have been found. The depot was rebuilt shortly after, and steps were taken to ensure Staunton would never see such a tragedy on the railroad again. In the aftermath of the 1890 train wreck, there was an investigation done, but because there were so many eyewitnesses and they did find the brake rod, the investigation was pretty quick, and focus instead shifted to rebuilding and repairing the line. Now, Donna Huffer told me that maintenance was done on the tracks, and this prevented future derailments from the Goshen to Staunton route. Now, I mentioned earlier that there were some other train derailments in the region at the time. Donna told me that there were some in White Sulphur Springs. That one ended up killing 10 people. There was one in Fort Defiance a little bit before this one that didn't kill anyone but did injure a few people, and she said killed a bunch of chickens that were being transported. Now, there was one that caused a lot of excitement in Greenville in the 1880s when a train derailed near the station in Greenville, and it was actually carrying a bunch of circus animals. And according to reports, the circus animals got loose and were roaming the countryside in and around Greenville. Now, Donna told me eventually they did round up all of the animals, but there for a while, newspaper reports described people being scared, at the thought of seeing elephants, giraffes, lions, and tigers running in the fields and woods around Greenville, Virginia. These are just a few of several derailments, Huffer said, that happened in and around Augusta County between 1870 and 1900, but none would be as impactful as the 1890 April wreck in Staunton, Virginia. The 1890 train derailment in Staunton, Virginia forever changed rail travel in the region. I want to thank you all for watching this special report. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I look forward to sharing the next one. Working hard for you, I'm Jacob Fife, WHSV.